She looked at me and said, "You're lucky you're too dumb to get involved." I smiled, nodded. Let her believe it. But I wasn't dumb. I knew what was really going on, the calls, the money, the lies. I just knew better than to prove her wrong. Because around here, the people who know too much don't last long. It started back in 2011. I was 23, broke and desperate for something stable. I just dropped out of community college and left behind a string of half-dead jobs when I landed a position at a local family-owned storage facility. Old place, brick and metal, tucked behind a car wash and a half-abandoned strip mall. The kind of business that never really closed, just changed names every 10 years to dodge taxes or lawsuits. It was called Whitlow Storage, and if you're from northern Illinois you might have driven by it and never noticed. My boss Miranda was in her late 30s, tall, sharp-voiced, and always wore cheap perfume that somehow smelled expensive. She ran the office with her brother Rick, shorter, built like a barstool, shaved head, quiet most of the time. I got the job through a friend of a friend who owed Miranda a favor, whatever that meant. She hired me on the spot. No background check, no questions. Just you show up on time, keep your mouth shut, and don't go snooping in the units. You'll do fine. I didn't ask questions. I needed the money. First few months were easy. I manned the desk, answered phones, took rent payments, and kept logs of who came and went. At first, it really did seem like a simple gig, weird hours, but decent pay for doing next to nothing. I even started getting along with Rick, who had this weird way of speaking like every sentence was half a warning. "Don't touch the red files," he said once, "just don't." I nodded, didn't ask, but small things started to pile up. Some units were marked as occupied but never opened, not once in the year I worked there. Others were opened constantly, like 3 or 4 times a week, always by the same 2 or 3 customers, all cash payments, always late at night after hours. Miranda would be there for those check-ins personally. Sometimes she'd wear gloves. Once I saw her take a package out of one of those units, hand it off to a man in a truck with no plates and say, "You didn't see me. You're new here." That was the first time I realized I probably shouldn't have seen that, but I laughed, said I thought she was joking, that I was just tired and probably imagining things. She squinted at me for a long second, then smiled. "You're lucky you're too dumb to get involved." That's when she said it. That line stuck with me. After that, I stopped asking even internal questions. I went through the motions, smiled, acted slow, wrote down fake plate numbers when asked, ignored the fact that one of the security cameras, the one pointed at row G, had been broken for almost 10 months. But I noticed everything, like the man who always came wearing gloves and sunglasses even at night. He never spoke, just nodded. Opened Unit 72B, stayed inside for 15, maybe 20 minutes, then left. No one else was allowed to rent a unit on either side of his. I checked once. The software wouldn't even let me assign them. I mentioned it once to Rick as a joke and he froze. "Don't log anything for 72B. Don't ever mention it again. Understand?" I said yeah, sure, like it was nothing. Then there were the noises. I worked late shifts, sometimes 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Miranda liked to keep someone on site in case of insurance issues. Most nights were dead quiet. But once or twice a month, usually between 2 and 3 a.m., I'd hear movement down near the back units. Not footsteps, more like dragging. Once I heard something metallic hit the ground and a car door slam. By the time I walked around with the flashlight, nothing, just silence and darkness. I started keeping a notebook, just vague notes, times, license plate descriptions, initials. I never put names, never wrote down the unit numbers, just locations like row F, South Side, white van, 2:12 a.m. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just didn't want to feel crazy. It wasn't until I found the second phone that I started getting scared. It was in the back office under a loose panel in the filing cabinet. Burner phone. No lock. Just one contact. I opened the message log. Dozens of texts, short, coded, almost unreadable. Stuff like "Drop Tuesday, 2x confirmed, 72B clear, backshift not watching." That last one was dated 3 days before I started working. I deleted nothing, put the phone back, closed the panel. Didn't breathe for about a full minute. After that, things changed. Miranda became friendlier, too friendly, offered me bonuses for doing simple things like locking up certain units myself or shredding certain documents. One day she handed me an envelope full of cash and said, "You've been good, keep it up." I didn't ask what it was for. Then in January, the man with sunglasses stopped showing up. His unit remained locked, untouched. But 2 days later, someone broke in. Not into the unit, into the building. They didn't steal anything, just trashed the break room and spray painted "We Know" on the inside of the office door. Miranda didn't call the cops, she painted over it herself. That's when Rick stopped coming in. The next week, Miranda asked me to stay overnight, said it was for insurance, left me with a bat and a thermos of coffee. I didn't sleep, just sat by the monitors flipping between dead footage and blind spots, watching nothing happen, until 3:46 a.m. Someone walked past the camera in row G wearing a hoodie, face obscured, moving fast. They didn't stop, just passed straight through. I rewound, played it again. But the figure never showed up a second time, just static, like it glitched. The next day, Miranda asked if I saw anything. I said no. She nodded, handed me another envelope. Good boy. That was the moment I realized there was no way out but through. I started making backup copies of everything, my logs, the phone's contents, even snippets of footage from the cameras that still worked. I stored them on an encrypted drive hidden in the ceiling tiles of the bathroom. I'm not proud of how long I stayed. 2 years. 27 months of pretending to be dumb, blind, oblivious, of watching things I wish I could forget, but I had my reasons. I was waiting for a moment for leverage, for a safe way to disappear. That moment almost came, but not how I expected. One evening in late March, a man showed up at closing time, not a regular. Mid-40s, wearing a worn leather jacket and carrying a duffel bag. He asked to rent a unit, but not just any. He specifically requested 49A. I told him it was already rented. He leaned in, smiled slightly, and said, "No, it's not." Something about his tone made my skin crawl. I checked the system again. Sure enough, 49A had been listed as occupied for over a year. No payments, no activity logs. Just a block on editing. I told him again it was unavailable. He nodded. Didn't argue. Just left the building quietly. But I watched him from the side window. He didn't get in a car. He walked around the back of the building and disappeared between rows. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was in 49A? Why did he want it? I tried to access the unit's entry logs later, but the screen glitched out every time I searched that number. Like it wasn't just restricted, like it had been wiped. The only other time I'd seen something like that, Unit 72B. 2 days later, Rick came back. He walked in like nothing happened, like he hadn't vanished for almost 3 months. He looked thinner, paler, and there was a bandage on his left wrist, mostly hidden under a jacket sleeve. He didn't speak much, just nodded at me and went straight into Miranda's office. The door closed. I heard raised voices through the wall, not shouting but tense, fast. At one point I heard, "He's starting to notice." Then silence. When Rick came out, he didn't look at me, just left. That was the last time I saw him. That same week, a police car parked outside for almost 40 minutes. Not a marked unit. Unmarked Crown Vic, dark windows. No one came in, no one came out. When I told Miranda, she didn't even flinch, just said, "They're watching the wrong place." Then she offered me the night shift permanently. More money, she said. Less hassle. I took it, not because I wanted to. Because I was afraid to say no. Around this time, the building's temperature logs, which I had to check weekly for maintenance compliance, started showing weird drops in specific rows. Row F and row H were fine, but row G, near the blind cameras, would dip by nearly 20 degrees some nights. Enough to trigger frost alarms, even in spring. I'd walk out there and feel nothing, just cold metal doors and silence. Once I opened a random unit in row G just to see. It was completely empty, clean. But it smelled faintly like bleach and something else I couldn't place, like rotting insulation or mold that had been scrubbed aggressively. I closed it fast, logged nothing. Then there was the guy with the dog. It was late April, around 2 a.m. I was doing a walkthrough when I saw movement near the back fence. Someone pacing with a German Shepherd, flashlight in hand. I shouted. He shouted back, said he was from the county. I asked for ID, he didn't show any, just smiled and said, "You should get out of here when your shift ends." Before she asks you to stay longer, he walked off before I could ask anything else. I tried telling Miranda. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "There's no one from the county working nights." She paused. "Don't go out back anymore. There's ground you don't want to walk over." After that, I started preparing to leave, not just quit, vanish. I wiped my name off social media, closed old accounts, transferred all my backups to a secure drive I kept in a hidden safe in my parents' attic. I even started practicing explanations for why I'd disappeared. But I never had the chance to use them, because a week before I planned to quit, a fire broke out in row G, or at least that's what they told the fire department. I was working when the alarm triggered. It wasn't smoke, it was gas. Something chemical. The cameras all blacked out at once. I ran to the back, but the whole row was already cordoned off with yellow tape by the time I got there. Not official tape, just strips of warning tape that had been preset like someone expected it. Miranda showed up 10 minutes later, dressed in full makeup and heels at 3 a.m., like she'd been waiting for the call. She looked at me and said, "You're going to write that it was a power short. Faulty wire." Got it. I said nothing, just nodded. That was the second time I realized she might be testing me. The next morning, row G was welded shut, literally. Steel plates over the doors, screws drilled into the hinges, concrete poured over the locks. And none of the tenants said a word. That same night, 72B disappeared from the system. Not marked closed, just gone. As if it had never existed, and I started getting texts from an unknown number. At first they were short. "Why are you still there? You're not safe. She's watching." Then one night, just after midnight, "You already know too much. If you want to survive, leave now." I deleted the messages and turned off the phone. But I kept thinking about the man with the dog, the frozen row, the unit that disappeared, the notebook I'd kept. It vanished from my locker 3 days later. No sign of forced entry. No one else had keys. Miranda asked if I'd lost anything important lately. Her tone made it clear that she already knew. That was when I realized I wasn't playing dumb anymore. I'd become part of it. By the time I left that job, I'd witnessed at least 4 incidents that never made the news. I saw 2 different people come to reclaim units that didn't exist in the system. I saw Miranda give someone a sealed envelope and whisper, "This never happened." I saw a man in a janitor's uniform walk in and never walk out. And the worst part, I still don't know what they were hiding. Drugs, bodies, money laundering, something worse. All I know is this: Miranda still runs that place. The name's changed again. The security cameras are newer now, but some of the units still show no activity, still pay in cash, still avoid the system. Sometimes late at night I get the urge to drive by, just to see if Unit 72B is back, or if anyone ever opened 49A, but I don't, because the truth is I survived by playing dumb, and I don't plan on getting smart now. It took me almost 6 months to get back to sleeping through the night after I left. I never went back for the last paycheck. Never asked for a reference. Never spoke to Miranda or anyone from Whitlow Storage again. I changed my number, moved 2 towns over, and started working at a gas station night shift just to stay under the radar. I told everyone I just needed a reset, a quiet life. And for a while, I believed it, or I tried to. But the thing about staying quiet for too long is, eventually the silence gets louder than the noise you were running from. In August 2014, I got a call from an unknown number. No caller ID, just restricted. I let it ring. Voicemail came through but nothing played, just 3 seconds of static, then a click. I told myself it was a wrong number, but then it happened again a week later. This time I picked up, nothing, just silence on the other end. I said hello twice. Then I heard breathing, steady, slow, male. I hung up and didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, the power went out in my apartment, just mine. The entire building was fine. When I called the electric company, they said the outage had been registered internally, as if I'd requested a service shutoff. I hadn't. No one had access to my account. I changed all my passwords that night. That's when I realized I hadn't left it behind. I'd just left the building. I tried to go back to the drive with the backups I had hidden in my parents' attic, but when I checked, it was gone. The box was there, the ceiling tile undisturbed, but the drive, and only the drive, was missing. My parents swore they hadn't touched anything. I believed them. They had no idea it even existed. I started noticing other things too. A car parked across from my building for hours with no one inside. A man with a baseball cap following me into a hardware store, never buying anything. A letter in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a single photo, me, sitting in the break room at Whitlow, smiling at the camera. It wasn't from the security feed, it was taken from inside the room. At eye level, I stopped going to work. I started sleeping with a chair under the doorknob. I got paranoid enough to drive out of state, just for a weekend to clear my head. I stayed at a motel near the Wisconsin border. Nothing special, faded carpets, buzzing fridge, paper-thin walls. The kind of place no one would think to look. I paid in cash, didn't give my real name. On the second night, the room phone rang. No one should have known I was there. I picked up, a woman's voice, soft, calm. "You should stop looking." That was it, then a dial tone. I left that night. Didn't even check out. Back home, things went quiet again, for a while. A few weeks of silence, enough to almost believe maybe I'd imagined some of it. Maybe I was just on edge, maybe I'd watched too many documentaries. But then I got a message on a new phone I'd bought under a different name. "You're not done yet." No sender, no number, just those 4 words. I started researching, quietly, carefully. Not about Miranda, not about Rick, but about Whitlow, and what came before it. Turns out that property had changed hands 7 times in 20 years, always between shell companies, always bought in cash, sold off quietly. Same pattern, 3 to 5 years of operation, then a sudden change in ownership, a rebrand, and a new manager brought in. Each time the name was just different enough to not raise red flags. There were no online reviews, no Better Business Bureau filings, no employment records tied to any of the past companies. It was like the place existed in a legal gray zone, real but untouchable. I dug deeper. Found a zoning report from 1996 buried in a county archive. It mentioned environmental concerns beneath the lot, something about residual industrial contaminants that made the ground unsuitable for residential development. But the full report had pages missing, entire sections redacted. Even the file number had a handwritten note beside it: "Do not refile." Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A missing persons report from 2002. A part-time employee at Benton Self-Storage. The name Whitlow had before 2010. His name was Caleb Dorsey, 26 years old, hired in June, last seen September 14th, locking up the north gate, vanished without a trace, no leads, case closed in 2005, status presumed dead, same job, same shift, same location, no one had followed up, no press, no family interviews, just a photo and a name. Caleb looked normal. Same tired face, same half-worried expression I saw in the mirror every night during my last months at Whitlow. I printed the article, put it in a folder with the photo I'd received, and a list of dates I remembered from the logbooks. Then I stopped. Something about even keeping the paper copy felt dangerous. I burned the folder the next day. I started seeing someone after that. Her name was Eliza. We met at the coffee shop where I'd taken to writing in the mornings. She was a server, part-time, kind eyes, smart. She noticed I was always alone, always scribbling, always watching the door. Eventually, she sat down and asked, "What are you afraid of?" I didn't answer right away. But I didn't lie either. I told her parts of it, watered down. Just enough to sound like someone with a weird ex-boss, maybe a corporate scam job. I didn't mention Row G or 72B or the man who never walked back out, but Eliza didn't run. She listened. She even started helping me dig, quiet, careful research. She was good at it. Too good. One night she found something I hadn't, an archived news clipping from 1984. A fire at a furniture warehouse. Same lot where Whitlow now stood. Multiple casualties, but the report only mentioned one confirmed name, a man named Jeremy R. Whitlow. Owner. The article said the cause of the fire was never determined. The insurance payout was sealed in court records. And then, nothing, no follow-up, no mention of bodies, no survivors interviewed. I asked Eliza how she found it. She just said it took time, and a few very old library systems, but I could tell something in her shifted after that night. She became more cautious, started asking me if I still had the backups, if I'd kept any physical evidence. I told her no. She asked again 2 days later, then a third time, and that's when it hit me. She wasn't asking for herself, she was asking for someone else. I didn't see it right away. I wanted to trust her. She was the first person who didn't look at me like I was unraveling. The first who didn't try to talk me down or dismiss what I'd seen as paranoia. But when she asked about the backups for the third time, not casually, not out of concern but with a precise, almost clinical tone, something shifted. I started noticing things. She stopped spending the night as often. Her phone always faced down. And one evening while I was boiling water for tea, I caught her in the reflection of the microwave. She was quietly moving through my apartment, opening drawers. She didn't take anything, just looked, closed the drawer, smiled at me when I came back into the room. The next morning she was gone, no replies to texts. Phone disconnected. Social media wiped. A mutual friend said Eliza had always been a little intense and sometimes just dropped off the map after jobs ended. I searched her name in public databases. Nothing, not one trace, like she never existed. Or like the name was borrowed. That wasn't coincidence. A week later, a plain manila envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, no postage. Inside was a USB stick, plain, no label, no markings. I plugged it in using a secondary machine I kept offline for security. No malware, just one folder, titled 43 to 72B internal. Inside were 7 video files, grayscale footage, dated, all between 2012 and 2014, overlapping with my time at Whitlow. The first clip showed a man unlocking Unit 72B. His face obscured, tall, hunched. He stepped inside, never came out. The footage ran for 43 minutes, no edits, just silence and stillness after the door shut. The second clip showed Rick, my old manager, standing outside the same unit sometime later. He opened the door, stood staring into the dark for almost 5 full minutes. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, mouthed something I couldn't hear, and walked off. Again, the unit was never entered. The third clip was Miranda. This one shook me. She wasn't alone. She was leading someone. A man in a suit, nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. She opened the unit, gestured for him to go in. He hesitated. She pushed, not forcefully but deliberately. He stepped inside. She followed. The door closed. The camera timestamp flickered. At minute 11:42, the door opened. Only Miranda came out. She locked the unit behind her, walked away. The remaining clips were older, fuzzier footage, different angles, maybe older cameras. But the pattern was the same. People went in. The door shut. Time passed. The door reopened. One person short every time. There was no audio, no indication of who recorded these or why they were sent to me. I destroyed the USB that night, took it apart piece by piece and dropped the fragments in 5 separate dumpsters across town. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I waited for a knock at the door that never came. But the next morning someone had left a note on my windshield. It was handwritten in thick black marker on a torn scrap of cardboard. No more warnings, no signature. Just that. I called out sick from my new job and spent the day in a library, trying to keep moving. I sat at a corner table, switching spots every hour. I thought I was being careful. I really believed I was staying ahead of it, until I opened my laptop and found a file on the desktop I didn't put there. It was named, do_not_run. I didn't open it. I shut the laptop, left the library through the back entrance and drove 3 towns over. I stayed at a 24-hour diner until sunrise, paying in cash and watching every person who walked in like they might be following me. That's when it all started coming together in my head. The units, the people who never reappeared, the silence in the system, the man who asked for 49A Eliza, the USB, all of it. I wasn't caught in some criminal operation. At least not a regular one. I was part of something curated. I stopped calling it a storage facility in my head. I started calling it what it was, a filter, a place where people were sorted, watched, tested. And if they passed the wrong test, if they knew too much, they didn't just disappear. They were processed. What did that mean? I still don't know. But here's what I do know. Whitlow Storage still exists. It has a new name now, Redland Secure Storage. I found it buried on a local business listing site, with one review. A 5-star rating from a profile with no history. The review simply said, very discreet. Staff doesn't ask questions. Exactly what I needed. I still haven't gone back. I've moved twice since then, changed my name once, wiped everything I could, and even now, years later, I still get the occasional sign, a flicker of a car that shouldn't be in the lot, a piece of mail with no sender. A stranger asking if I've ever worked in logistics. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd played dumb just a little longer. If I'd never kept those notes. If I'd never talked to Eliza. If I'd just let it all go and walked away like I was supposed to. But I didn't. And now I don't know if I'm running from something. Or if I've already been filed, and I'm just waiting for the door to finally close behind me. I stopped using the internet the way I used to. No more emails, no social media, no cloud storage. Everything went back to paper. I kept a burner laptop in a Faraday bag under my bed, only powered on when I was miles from home. I memorized routes, rotated grocery stores, never filled my tank at the same gas station twice in a row. You'd think that kind of life would wear you down. But it didn't. It just became normal, like flinching at sudden noise or checking every rearview mirror twice before a turn. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about control. Then, one night, I saw a name I hadn't seen in years. I was at a print shop, one of those self-service places, late evening. I glanced at the print queue someone had left open on a kiosk beside mine. Most files were labeled junk, receipts, travel docs, nothing special. But one stood out, 72B_contract_archive.pdf. I froze. It could have been coincidence, could have been anything, but my hands moved before I could think. I hit cancel. Then I checked the machine's cache. The file was gone, no trace. I scanned the room, only 3 other people there. A college kid with headphones, a woman printing resumes, and a man near the back, standing still, not using a kiosk, just staring at the wall of printer paper. Unmoving, I left. Next day, I booked a train, out of state. I didn't pack anything, didn't tell anyone. Just bought a one-way ticket to Pennsylvania and disappeared for 6 weeks. No phone, no credit cards, cash only. I stayed in old motels and pay-by-the-week rooms, the kind where the sheets don't match and the lights flicker. But it felt safer than home. Then, sometime during week 4, I started dreaming about the units again, not just seeing them, walking through them, past locked doors, rows repeating like a maze. Every unit I passed had something different inside. A chair, a mirror, a humming noise. And always the last unit would be open, empty, until I stepped inside. Then I'd wake up, heart pounding, hands clenched into fists, but I kept having them, same pattern, over and over. Until one night I didn't wake up after stepping inside. The dream just kept going. Inside the unit was nothing, not a box, not a shelf, just a chair and a file cabinet. I sat in the chair. I opened the drawer. Inside were photographs. Hundreds, all of people I knew or thought I knew. Miranda, Rick, Eliza, Caleb Dorsey, my own parents, myself, all caught mid-step, mid-expression, not posing. Like surveillance, at the bottom was a folder labeled intake_ongoing. When I reached for it, the dream broke. I sat bolt upright, drenched in sweat, motel TV buzzing, white noise in the background. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, but when I checked my duffel bag the next morning, I found something I hadn't packed, a photograph. Black and white, faded edges, me standing outside Whitlow Storage holding a clipboard, looking away from the camera. The timestamp in the corner read a date that didn't make sense. 3 days from now. That's when I knew I wasn't hiding. I was being watched, or worse, documented. Back in Illinois, I returned to the one place I swore I wouldn't, the county recorder's office. I asked to view zoning records for 711 Kittering Lane, the address of Whitlow, or what used to be Whitlow. The clerk was confused. There's no record of a structure there, she said. I asked her to double-check, gave her old names, Benton Storage, Redland, Whitlow, nothing. She said the land was registered as undeveloped since 1987. That's when I stood up and left, because in 2013 I worked there. I locked those gates every night. I swept those hallways. I watched the cameras. I got paid. And now officially the place never existed. I spent that night driving. No destination. Just motion. Interstates, rural backroads, gas stations at 3 a.m. I kept thinking maybe if I stayed in motion long enough whatever was following me would fall behind. But around 4:20 a.m. I stopped for gas near a truck stop outside Madison, Wisconsin. I went inside to buy coffee, and when I came back, there was something tucked under my windshield wiper. Another photo. This one wasn't of me. It was Miranda standing outside a building I didn't recognize. Brick facade, dark glass. No signage. But the timestamp on the corner was familiar. Same style. Same typeface. Same future date. now just a day away, and handwritten across the bottom in sharp black ink. Do not enter. The message wasn't threatening. It was worse. It was matter of fact, like a warning that assumed I'd ignore it anyway. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in the back of my car in a rest area off the interstate watching trucks pull in and out, sipping cold coffee and staring at the photo. That building. Something about it pulled at me. Like I'd seen it before but couldn't place it. Then I remembered, it was in the background of one of the old surveillance tapes, just a few frames, reflected in a windshield. That same building. It was near Whitlow, close enough to walk to. But if the storage facility never officially existed, what else had been erased? I made a decision that day. I don't know if it was smart, probably wasn't. But there's only so long you can run from a door before you finally want to know what's behind it. I drove back toward Kittering Lane to the spot where Whitlow used to be. When I got there, I parked across the street. It was late afternoon, sunny, quiet. Suburban traffic passed behind me. Kids were playing somewhere down the block. But the lot across the street, empty, not just cleared, flattened, leveled, fresh gravel, a couple orange cones, no fences, no signs, no workers, just silence, like nothing had ever been there at all. But I knew this lot. I knew the curve of the driveway, even if it had been covered. I knew where the back gate used to swing open, the way the light would hit the office window around 5:30 p.m. And most of all, I knew exactly where 72B had been. I walked onto the lot. Every step felt wrong. Not because I was trespassing, but because I wasn't. There were no signs, no barriers. It was almost like the place wanted to be walked on. I stopped in the center of the gravel, roughly where row G would have ended, and then I heard it, the sound of a latch. Soft, metallic. I turned. Nothing. I listened. Silence. Then very faintly from what should have been underground, a low rhythmic hum, machinery, faint vibrations in my feet, almost imperceptible. I knelt, pressed my hand against the gravel. It was real. There was something under the lot. I stood quickly, too quickly. My vision blurred. I staggered, caught my breath. And that's when I saw the car across the street, black sedan, parked where mine had been minutes ago, and standing next to it, Miranda. Same hair, same stance, same cheap necklace she wore back then. But her eyes weren't on me. They were scanning the lot, as if looking for someone else. Then she looked directly at me, didn't flinch, didn't smile, just raised her hand, not a wave, just a gesture, a slow curl of her fingers beckoning once, and got in the car. It pulled away without hurry. I left the lot in a daze, drove 10 minutes before I realized I'd taken the wrong exit, then kept driving for hours. I didn't even know what I was running from anymore, the place, her, myself. When I finally pulled into a hotel that night, exhausted and shaking, the desk clerk handed me a key before I even gave my name. I said, I didn't make a reservation. He looked at the logbook. It says here you called yesterday. I hadn't, he shrugged. Room 203, paid in cash. You asked for a corner unit away from the stairs. I took the key. Inside the room was small, clean, ordinary. Except for one thing. A folder on the desk, my name on the cover inside, photos, dozens, all of me, different places, different times. Some I remembered, walking out of the library, checking my mail, standing in line at a diner. Others I didn't. One was of me asleep in bed, another shaving in the bathroom, and one was from today. Standing in the lot, kneeling, my hand pressed to the ground. There was no note, no explanation, just the last page, a single sentence typed in block letters. You're already inside. I didn't leave the hotel that night. I sat at the small table for hours, going over the photographs again and again, memorizing the angles, the lighting, the distance of the shots. Some were clearly taken from across the street, others through windows at impossible angles. But one photo in particular made my stomach twist, me on the phone leaning against the brick wall behind the old Whitlow office. I'm smiling. I remember the moment. I was talking to a friend about quitting. But in the photo behind my shoulder, just barely in frame, is a shape. A silhouette, a human form blurred watching, and suddenly it hit me. This wasn't surveillance, this was documentation, not to track me, to study me. I spent the next morning making copies of the folder, scanned the pages, encrypted them, stored them on physical flash drives, mailed them to 3 separate P.O. boxes I'd been paying for under fake names. I burned the original, washed the ash down the bathroom sink, left the hotel without checking out. That afternoon, I went to the address from the photo with Miranda, the glass-fronted building. It was real. Tucked in a quiet business park on the outskirts of town. No signs, no cars in the lot. Just tinted windows and a locked door with a card reader. I stood there for 10 minutes watching the reflection of the road behind me, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. So I left. But that night, back at a cheap motel 3 counties over, I found something in my room I hadn't brought in. Another envelope, no name, no markings. Inside was a keycard, just a keycard. Black, unmarked, and a single post-it note in case you change your mind. I didn't sleep. I laid in bed with the lights on and the keycard on the table, staring at it like it might change shape if I looked away. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I'd throw it in a river, that I'd burn it, bury it, walk away. But at 3:27 a.m. I was back outside the glass building. No cars, no lights. I walked up to the door, held the card to the reader, green light, click. The door opened. Inside was silence. Sterile white walls, long hallway. The kind you only see in hospitals or underground labs in documentaries no one finishes. No reception desk, no elevators, just a narrow path and fluorescent lighting. I walked past closed doors with no numbers. At the end of the hallway, another door, this one slightly ajar. I pushed it open. A small room. Table, 2 chairs, 1 light overhead, and a file just like the one from the hotel, but this one had a different name on it, Miranda Grant. I opened it. Her records, employment history, financials, handwriting analysis, photographs, some familiar, some disturbingly intimate, and notes, labeled with dates and subject IDs. Subject maintains primary vector position within WHITLOW 72 network, continues to demonstrate consistent gatekeeping behavior, high compliance, no known data breaches. But the last page was different. A single sheet, blank except for 1 line at the top, successor identified, underneath, typed in faint gray font. Subject 043 assigned, profile redacted. There was a blank space just wide enough for a name. I stepped back, looked around the room. There were no cameras, no microphones I could see, but I knew this room wasn't for Miranda, it was for me. A test, a step, a decision. I left the file exactly where I found it, walked out the same hallway, slower this time. No alarms, no footsteps, no voices. Back outside, the sun was just starting to rise. I got in my car, started driving, didn't stop for hours, and now I live quiet. No job, no phone. Just a P.O. box in a town that doesn't ask questions. I work cash gigs, pay rent in person, move every few months. I keep my eyes open and my mouth shut, because somewhere out there, someone is still watching, not to kill me, not to silence me. But because I passed something, a threshold, I didn't expose them, I didn't interfere, I didn't run. I played dumb long enough for them to decide I was useful. And now, sometimes when the phone rings and no one speaks, I don't hang up right away. I listen, because part of me is still waiting to find out what they think I've become, and whether this was ever about storage at all, or if I was the one being stored from the very beginning.